Deep in the ocean depths around the Bahamas, something incredible has been lying lost for centuries. An enormous ship sank here long ago, and its remarkable hull drifted into the abyss. The value of this ship's cargo was practically unparalleled. It would be worth a vast fortune today. It's easy to understand, then, why some explorers have desperately been trying to locate this legendary vessel's hull. Lost ship's priceless treasure rises to the surface after a 350-year search. This ship is the Nuestra Señora de las Maravillas, and it really is the stuff of maritime legend. The vessel was lost in 1656 as it traveled from the Spanish colonies in the Americas back to Spain itself. On board at that time were all manner of incredible jewels and riches. The Maravillas was constructed in the Basque region of northern Spain, in a province called Gipuzkoa. Its name was taken from a statue of Mary, Mother of Jesus, which had been sculpted during the 13th century and was known for its association with miracles. In keeping with the links to religion, a chapel was installed aboard the ship to allow services to take place during a given voyage. No miracles would save the Maravillas in the end, though. During the second half of the year 1654, the ship's fate was decided. The ship was in Colombia at the time, awaiting the arrival of another ship carrying silver. This other vessel ran into difficulty. A salvage mission was initiated to recover as much silver as possible from this other ship, and quite a bit was saved. But that meant it was down to the Maravillas to bring it back to Spain now. The salvaged silver was consequently loaded on board, in addition to the immense cargo it was already carrying. It was a recipe for disaster. Eventually, it was time for the severely overloaded ship to set sail for Europe. Its intended route would take it along the Bahama Channel, which traced a line between the Bahamas themselves and Florida. There was an issue, though. This area hadn't yet been sufficiently mapped. Sure enough, the Maravillas eventually lost its way. Then the unthinkable happened. The Maravillas had been sailing alongside another ship, but confusion engulfed them both. This other vessel slammed into the Maravillas, which set it on course for a coral reef. With that, the overloaded craft sank to the bottom of the ocean, and all that treasure on board was lost. And that, of course, is to say nothing of the loss of life. Something like 650 people were on the ship when it sank, with the vast majority perishing in the disaster. Most went down with the vessel or floated away on debris, while about 150 managed to stay above the surface on a large piece of the ship still not underwater. Only 45 survived in the end, with the others wiped out by the conditions at night or by shark attacks. As for the treasure on board, the amounts that were lost are absolutely staggering. If records are to be trusted, then somewhere between 30 and 40 tons of silver were on the Maravillas as it went down. Plus, there was a big religious statue that was made entirely out of gold. Naturally enough, the Spanish authorities sent out a salvage team to try and recover some of these incredibly valuable items. This mission, though, was a failure. If anything, it just made things worse. In trying to bring the ship to the surface, they ended up splitting it apart, which simply meant that the treasure dispersed. So, the ship stayed at the bottom of the ocean for generations. Attempts were made during the 17th century to locate the lost ship, but it didn't work out. It was only much later, in fact, that the Maravillas was ever successfully salvaged again. That was during the 1970s, after a bunch of divers finally managed to broadly work out where it was. Still, even though the ship had been located, no salvage operation was forthcoming. That only occurred the following decade, in 1986. A team of explorers tracked it down with the help of some electric wizardry, which helped them to pinpoint its specific location. It was trapped beneath a whole lot of sand which had drifted over it across the years as the wreck lay upon the surface of the seabed. The team removed most of the sand, and with that they were ready to go. Divers were sent to the depths so they could begin to recover some of the treasures from this ship that was lost so long ago. The cargo had been estimated to be worth something like $1.6 billion, and that was in 1986. The pressure, then, must have been immense for the divers. The wreckage had been 30 feet underwater, situated 50 miles or so from Grand Bahama Island. It was down, then, to a team of divers and archaeologists to get stuck into the salvage mission. They did so under the watchful eye of business tycoon Herbert Humphreys, who was bankrolling the operation. The team was successful in bringing up treasure worth millions of dollars. On the surface of it, that sounds like a roaring success, but then we remember the total value of the treasure amounted to more than $1 billion. This haul, though ostensibly impressive, was mere crumbs in the face of that. Still, the recovered items were interesting enough. There were coins made from silver and gold, not to mention several emeralds, too. There were weapons such as muskets and swords, plus a cannon and several cannonballs. The team of explorers also found ceramics from both Spain and China. What happened to all the loot recovered from the underwater wreckage? Well, the government of the Bahamas had it valued and took what amounted to 25% of the hull's overall worth. The remaining 75% went to Humphreys, who at the time spoke publicly about his plans to show it off in a museum. All of this took place a long time ago now, and technology has moved on quite a bit since 1986. The methods utilized by Humphreys' team to explore the wreckage of the Maravillas weren't terribly sophisticated by today's standards. Inevitably, a recent mission has taken another approach. During the summer of 2022, news emerged regarding a new effort to explore the sunken Maravillas. This latest mission was different to the ones that had come before it in the sense that it had employed new, more scientific methods of analysis. They would help to reveal far more of the wreck than ever before. David Gibbons is a marine archaeologist and writer who has followed this story carefully. He wasn't a part of this latest investigation, though he is an expert in the field, and his thoughts on the matter were consequently published by Smithsonian Magazine. Gibbons observed, "The Maravillas has never seen the right level of archaeological respect. Past teams indiscriminately used smash and grab tactics. Everyone thought the ship, the wreck, was destroyed forever." This latest effort was led by philanthropist Carl Allen, who assembled a team of scientists to do the job. The group utilized magnetometers, which detect and assess magnetic fields. This technique helped them to accurately plot the seabed all around the wreckage, revealing any pieces of debris that might be down there. Meanwhile, an airplane flew overhead and surveyed the sea below it in search of further debris. Underneath the surface, a submarine was deployed to sink deep underwater to have a look, too. It was a much more extensive search than had ever taken place before, but it was gradual, difficult work. The project fell under the banner of Allen Exploration, which is known as ALENX for short. This is the organization established by Allen himself in 2016, which, 3 years later, had been given a license by the government of the Bahamas to search for the Maravillas. No group had been officially permitted to do so since the end of the 90s. Because of shoddy salvaging missions in the past, it was thought the Maravillas had been basically destroyed and its treasure scattered to a likely unrecoverable degree. After all, different salvage bids had been taking place across the centuries by people with varying methods. Essentially, before this latest effort, cumulatively the searches had constituted something of a mess. On top of that, even the things that had been recovered from the ship had been recorded very poorly. That meant it wasn't entirely clear what had been brought to the surface and what hadn't. In other words, ALENX may have been engaging in a fruitless mission that would yield no concrete results. The true state of the wreckage remained a mystery. Still, the ALENX team persisted and soon made an amazing discovery. They found that artifacts from the ship had seemingly been hidden by previous salvagers on purpose. Like pirates storing treasure away for the future, these people had tried to keep gold and other valuables for themselves and away from the authorities. Gibbons was delighted that the ALENX team was bringing such revelations to light. He told Smithsonian, "ALENX reversing the past's disrespectful quarrying of the wreck comes as a relief. Finally, we can look forward with hope to some science answering research questions long thought dead and buried." In addition, the team's work with magnetometers also revealed thousands of locations within a 55 square mile area that may have contained treasure. They investigated these spots, which soon led to a wealth of discoveries. Among them were coins, wine bottles, jewelry, the handles of swords, and porcelain. Taken together, all of these items painted a picture of life in the Spanish Empire at the time of the Maravilla's sinking. James Sinclair is the marine archaeologist who directed this ALENX project. Speaking to Smithsonian, He explained the significance of his team's work. He said, "This isn't just forensic marine archaeology. We're also digging into former excavations, working out what previous salvage teams got up to, where and why. So much data has been lost from this ravaged wreck. It's time to reverse those trends." Alan himself is delighted with his team's discoveries, but his favorite finds aren't necessarily what you'd expect. Rather than coveting the gold and silver in particular, he loves finding more ordinary items. The reason, he explained, was because he had a greater connection with everyday finds. He added, "We've discovered artifacts that connect with the crew and passengers. Everything you touch, from a musket ball to a piece of jewelry, links with the past to people like you and me." The personal items recovered from the seabed include a pendant made of gold and formed into the shape of a shell. This was bound to a special material known as bezer stone, which was revered in Europe for supposedly having the ability to heal people. Meanwhile, another recovered pendant was adorned with gemstones and possibly had religious connotations. Several of the pendants recovered from the wreckage seem to have been related to the Order of Santiago. This was a military organization from Spain and Portugal, which dated back to around the year 1160. It consisted of knights and was considered to be the most distinguished organization of its kind. Beatriz Chater Sampson is a historian specializing in jewelry who's taken a look at images of the pendants. According to her, finding so many pendants linked to the Order of Santiago in varying designs and gemstones is incredibly rare on land. They would have been strung around the neck on gold chains to show that pious owners had made a pilgrimage to St. James' Shrine. They make the decks of the Maravillas feel like a floating aristocratic court, mixed with the sweat of sailors heaving on rigging. Beyond the pendants and other personal items, some of the more lavish finds to be extracted are interesting in their own right. Take, for instance, a massive 6-foot chain made from gold that was recovered. The artifact resembles a piece of jewelry worn by the Spanish monarch Philip IV in a painting, suggesting this piece had been designed for a very lofty figure indeed. A huge number of jewels and gemstones have been discovered laying upon coral reefs by the Alanx team. These things are individually only a couple of inches in length, yet their collective discoveries are hugely significant. They represent clear evidence of smuggling back at the height of the Spanish Empire, back then thought to have been a highly common practice. Reflecting on his project, Alan told Smithsonian, "Exploring the debris field veering away from the Maravilla's strike point where the boat was wrecked is a mixed feeling. The sea bottom is barren. The colorful coral that divers remembered from the 1970s is gone, poisoned by ocean acidification and choked by shifting sand. It's painfully sad. Still lying on those dead gray reefs here, and there are sparkling finds." The items recovered from the Alanx project have been exhibited in the Bahamas Maritime Museum, a brand new institution which opened on August 8, 2022. This is located on Grand Bahama Island and doesn't exhibit items exclusively associated with the Maravillas. The facility also concerns itself with the Bahamas' history more broadly. None of the items recovered by the Alanx are set to be put on the market and sold. Instead, their purpose is strictly to be educational, and they will therefore be exhibited at the museum. That's an incredible thought, considering just how much all these things are actually worth. But the heritage of the Bahamas is deemed more important. Alan X has actually found a host of other shipwrecks since getting to work in 2019. But the team is not done with the Maravillas just yet, as there's still an important part of the ship that still hasn't been located. This is the stern castle, which is an upper segment of the vessel. It probably split off from the rest of the ship as it was sinking. Who knows where it ended up after that? Alan is happy to keep going, as there's undoubtedly so much more to discover in the waters of the Bahamas. He told Smithsonian, "I could spend my life looking for ships in the Bahamas and only scratch the surface of what's down there. There are wrecks here from the 1500s forward. And who knows what's even earlier." These potential discoveries can help shape the story of the making of the Americas and the peoples that owned the land before colonial Europe arrived. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.